Domestic violence affects people psychologically, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Certain issues tend to be disregarded when it is approached from either cultural or religious point of view. On this episode of Let's Talk, we will be discussing a very trending issue: domestic violence, cultural and religious bias. Hello and welcome. My name is Olujoke Mosako. Joining me in the studio is Pastor Ossai Chegwe. He is the pastor in charge of RCCG Wealthy Place International. But before we delve into the discussion proper, I'd like to remind you, as always, to please and please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all of our social media platforms if you haven't done so yet. And let's just continue the ride, and please ensure that you learn one or two things from this discussion. It's indeed very important. Thank you so much, Pastor Osai, for coming on the show. It's indeed a great privilege to have you here, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay.
God bless you, Sister Joke, for the wonderful work you're doing.
Thank you, sir. So, what is domestic violence?
Domestic violence is actually a broad subject. It actually encompasses abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. There are a lot of things that are covered under the umbrella domestic violence. It is something that I believe is a societal evil that normally spirals out of control from the home. And this abuse can be from maybe a parent to a child, or from one person's husband to the wife, or a wife to the husband. Domestic violence is something that I think, happens, something that happens significantly much in our societies. It doesn't matter what country a person resides in. In America, for example, there are about 10 million cases of domestic violence every year. So it's a broad subject.
Okay. So, how is marriage a do or die affair? Even when we know we have such things coming on.
Okay, marriage is not a do or die affair. That's let me just say that, first and foremost. God frowns at divorce. But there's nothing that says that if somebody is physically being abused in a home, or they can no longer endure that relationship, they have to remain there till they die. A person can be separated from their spouse until the other person, who is the aggressor, I would like to say the abuser, gets help. And if they are seen to get help and they go through the entire process of being helped and they can be rehabilitated, then that relationship can be restored. You can separate from that person while that is going on. You cannot stay there when you are being battered. I think that is something that no society should accept.
Okay, I would like to know, is abuse inevitable in marriage?
Abuse is not, I don't think abuse should be accepted in any form. I'm going to put it this way. The reason why abuse happens is because one party in that relationship, or the two parties, do not have the emotional maturity to grow positively in that relationship. And when there's not emotional maturity to handle situations, especially tense situations, to be able to negotiate on issues, to be able to be agreeable even when people disagree, that is what can degenerate to physical abuse, to emotional abuse, and then it begins to, you begin to see things begin to become a bigger problem than just a small splinter. So I think two people can cohabit, can live together in love, can love one another, can cherish one another, because that's the desire of God. In the scriptures, for example, the example of marriage that we ought to learn from is the relationship of Jesus and the church. Jesus is the head of the church, and Jesus loves the church. And so when a husband is there battering the wife, he's doing the complete opposite. He's supposed to be using his strength to protect his wife, for example. Instead, he's now using that to actually abuse the wife. It also goes the other way, although it doesn't happen that often, but there are also situations whereby wives also physically abuse their husband, especially when they have the advantage in terms of physique. So it's not inevitable. One cannot say it's inevitable.
Okay, we know what is actually happening around the world. Basically, Nigeria, over the death of Minister Chegwe is still very much disturbing, and the church has been receiving a lot of backlash as a result of that. What do you have to say, especially for the cause of her death, and why is the church being blamed?
Okay, I'm going to attack it. I want to address this thing with from several angles before we arrive at where the church is now being blamed. If a church, for example, has a person who is enduring domestic violence, and that person does not bring it to the fore, does not come to the church and say, "This is what I'm going through," then that is something that you cannot easily address because you are not aware of it. That's number one. Number two, the people around the person enduring the abuse, they have to also take the responsibility of doing something. In domestic violence, I believe there's the role of the family, whether it be the extended family or the immediate family of the person enduring the abuse. There's the role of the clergy, which in this case, we're talking about the church. There's the role of the government. How does the government handle issues of domestic violence? There's the role of the individual, the person itself. Then there's also the role of the counselor. That means when it gets to the time that help is needed. And so in the case of the church, which I'm going to narrow in now, if the church is not aware, if people do not bring the issue to the church for it to be addressed, if the church is now aware and that particular church is not proactive in trying to address the matter, I like to say it this way. Most of the things that we see in society that society deals with are usually, they're always swept under the rug. And so if that is not addressed in a proactive manner, it can actually become something that can fester, it can become worse. And so the church has a role to play. The individuals involved have a role to play. The people who are around them, their friends, those who are supposed to be aware of what's happening internally, have a role to play. Oftentimes, the person who is enduring the abuse, the person who is the victim in this case, are so afraid of the abuser, are so terrified by the abuser. And so oftentimes they are not willing to speak about it openly. It's just like a hush-hush thing. And so if they are not willing to speak about it, and nobody around them is willing to speak about it, then you can see things begin to degenerate. They spiral out of control. There are some churches that are so large in size, and so maybe the pastor might not know firsthand what is happening with each family in the church, but I believe churches can adopt the same formula that Moses was told to use by Jethro in Exodus 18, which allows the church to have, leaders at different levels, cadres. And it helps the person who is the leader at that, whether it is a cell group or something, to know exactly what's transpiring in every family, especially in this case, when domestic violence is involved. I think I should just leave it at that, then we can talk about it a little more later.
Okay. Now, something just dropped in my mind right now. The man in question, the abuser in question, has a title, pastor. Now, how because I believe that many are called, but few are chosen. And some men of God, as soon as they say, okay, they are called by God. Now, in this time and age, we see people rise in rank to that position. Would you say that that's the reason why we have such a menace? Because we also know that there are some people that bears the name pastor, but there are also abusers. They might not be beating their wives, but emotionally, psychologically, they are doing so. Would you say there is a gap somewhere?
Okay, let me talk about when you say a pastor. A pastor is supposed to be somebody either pastoring a flock or pastoring a ministry or being head of maybe a particular unit in a church. How does this happen? If I do not know much about you as a person and you are committed in church, for example, as a worker, as an individual in the church, most likely people will begin to look at them in that light. Oh, this person is a committed brother. This person is a committed sister. And people begin to rise through the ranks. And oftentimes, people do not want to bring their dirty laundry in public. And so the person who is enduring the abuse doesn't want to speak about it because everybody wants to project their best image. I'm just giving instances, I'm just using that as an example. So people come to church and they have problems. But I like to look at church this way. A church is like a triage in a hospital. A church is like a place, an emergency room when people come and they need help. People they have issues. And if we are not aware, and that's why it is important that for those who are supposed to be leaders of congregations, leaders of units in every sphere of Christian life, we have to be very, very observant. We have to be, I like to do this in my church, for example. I'll just give an instance. I like to hear, I like to use people as a soundboard. What is happening out there? What's going on? Because if some of these issues are not talked about, people will not be comfortable to come and air their laundry out there and say, this is what I'm going through. And so really and truly, that person who is a pastor, do we know about the person's growing up? How did they grow up? I could give this example. A lot of families and the way these families are run are an incubator for the kind of men and women that society produces, the kind of people that come out into society. If a male child, for example, grows up in an abusive environment where the father is abusing the mother, he grows up with the mind that he should also either be an abuser or allow abuse to continue in the place. That same goes for the woman. If the woman grows up in an environment where she's supposed to just be there and not say anything about abuse, she feels it's acceptable. And so these are the things that I think we need to look deeply into. It is not an isolated problem. So domestic abuse is not to say that it is only reserved for a particular set of people. The person who you are calling pastor or deaconess or a leader in the church might have issues. And I believe we have, just like people go to the hospital and they actually are there and their information does not go out into the public because there's an agreement that is binding on the hospital to keep that confidential. I believe if somebody who is a leader in the church has a problem in their home, they should be able to go to their pastor and say, Pastor, this is what I'm dealing with. Or my leader, if you are the pastor of that particular assembly, go to the person higher up, whether it be your zonal pastor, whether it be your provincial pastor, and tell them this is what I'm going through. And they should not be kind of like, made a kind of an eyesore because of that. This is somebody needing help, and they should get the help that they're asking for.
Thank you so much for that. Let's go on this break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, the program is Let's Talk on the Anti-Work, and we've been discussing domestic violence, cultural and religious bias, and have been speaking with Pastor Ossai Chegwe. He is the pastor in charge of RCCG, Wealthy Place International. So let's continue from where we stopped. Yes, before we went on that break, I was going to ask that why do people, especially, okay, this is how I want to break it now. You talked about people approaching their pastor to actually express or tell the pastor what's going on. Don't you think that the trust system has really gone down? Maybe because you felt, if I say this to my pastor, he might use it to preach on the altar, or maybe when there is a fallout, he might use it to talk against me.
Okay, that is an excellent point. But I want to say this. If a person knows that they have a problem and they feel that the pastor of their particular assembly does not have the maturity to handle the situation at hand, of course, they can prayerfully seek out somebody who is also a Christian leader. It could be in that same denomination, that same ministry, and say, I want to come and discuss this issue I'm having with you, with my wife. This is the issue I'm having. And so there's nothing that says that because you belong to a particular church, you are stuck with that church. That doesn't mean you are leaving the church. That doesn't mean you are exiting the church. You are no longer a member of that assembly. But you can go to somebody you think, oh, this is somebody I think I could go to, I can confide in. And then my own issues will not be out there in the open. So this is not something that should be difficult for a person to do.
Okay. So what is the role of culture and religion in all of this, especially when it comes to divorce? We know we all, as women, we grew up in homes that the values instilled is basically they're preparing you for marriage. You should do this, you don't do that. Maybe if you have issues, you don't come back, you don't have a room anymore in this house, and all of that. And then the religious aspect. What is the role of these two entities in marriage, especially when it comes to divorce?
Okay, so culturally, this is very important that we state. Culturally, there's a tendency to say, you know what, you are not welcome back home. You are not, you don't, like you said earlier, you don't have a room here. It is not something that is common with us in this family to actually divorce, because it looks like the person who is leaving the husband's house, no matter what they are going through, has kind of like a stigma. And that's what happens culturally. The person is stigmatized. But I believe, we have grown past that. We should grow past that. Let me not say we have grown past that. We should grow past that. I strongly believe if somebody comes to you, if your daughter comes to you and tells you as a mother or as a father, look, I've been battered, I've been beaten, and this keeps happening, you should not send them back to the aggressor, to the person who is the abuser. I believe we should be able to say, you know what, this is our daughter, we should accept her and try to see the situation at hand and try to make sure we protect her. And in that place is not somewhere that is welcoming for her as a woman. She should not go back there. I believe this should be something that should be, settled amongst families. That is very important. Then number two thing I really want to say, which forms the foundation, is that a lot of things we do today, culturally, are just done out of formality. I'm just giving an instance. When you want to marry a woman, there's an introduction that is being done. But the introduction, what does it really mean? In olden days, in the olden times, the family of the family of the bride will go and find out more information about the groom. How did they live? How are they living? Do they have issues with physical violence? Do they have issues with domestic violence? You begin to find out more information. But today, for example, most of all those ceremonies are done are just a formality. People do not know about people. In fact, you get married to somebody before you realize they are a monster. That is a problem by itself. People are more concerned about the dowry. How much are you going to pay? Those are cultural issues. And I'm talking to Africa now. I'm speaking about Africa, But for example, in every society, there is culture. For example, here in America, they have the culture that, okay, well, if things get a little bit tense or things get a little bit unbearable, I'm out. I can leave. I'm independent. I can do what I. So that's a culture that can also impact marriage. People were having marriages, maybe, for example, from their country, and all of a sudden they come here. They can no longer, cohabit together. They can no longer work things out because it's easier for them to just part ways. So culture can also impact marriage in that way. Then I'm talking about also where, as regards to where the woman, culturally, the woman is feeling kind of suppressed. Culture can also play a big role in this. You shouldn't say certain things. You cannot air your views. One thing I must say, if you are in a marriage, in a relationship, if you are in a marriage, and you are so terrified by your spouse, by your partner, that's not a place you should be. If you are in a marriage, you are so fearful of your husband, that's not a place you should be. Because you should be able to express yourself. You should be able to speak exactly how you feel. And this is something that one can dialogue with their partner about. So culture plays a huge role in all of this, in suppression, or the person, in the woman in the relation feeling oppressed. These are things that normally happen. I believe, we can see that the world is changing. I personally believe that there should be room for dialogue. There should be that understanding. That's the Bible says something very profound. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. It said, I'm not giving you the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind. That's the kind of environment I believe that a woman should live. That same also goes for the church. In the church, there are a lot of pressures. When a sister is getting older, she's not unmarried yet, she's not married, you begin to see that, because they have good intentions, a pastor in the church, for example, can begin to do matchmaking. And then if things do not work out, of course, they're going to cast the blame on the pastor. It's only normal that happens. But I personally think, even though we are not upfront about doing some of these things, there's a way we can guide people and counsel them to have successful relationships.
Okay, so what about the religious aspect?
Okay, so that's what I was moving on to now. So with the religious aspect, like I said, there are pressures within the religious environment, the religious sphere. There are pressures, a lot of pressures. Is this person old enough to get married? Why are they still not married? And you begin to see things begin to make people begin to suggest, oh, what are you still waiting for? And then maybe you have prayed and you don't believe that a person particularly is your life partner or is meant to be your life partner. People have an issue with that, But I don't think we should rush into marriage. I think marriage is something that is something that is not something that I would rather say one should just do because other people are doing it. Oh, other sisters in the church or other brothers are getting married, or I've been to so many weddings and I'm yet to have my own, and so I have to do it. I strongly believe that there should be that spiritual leading to do something like marriage, because marriage is not like starting a business that you can easily walk away from. Marriage is something that should last a lifetime. You should have somebody, and believe it or not, there are a lot of people who come to the church to seek out a partner. They are not saved. They come to the church. They say, oh, because I want to get married now, let me go there. I'll see a sister who is in the choir. I'll see a sister who is serving in the church, and I want to make that person my wife. And that is where the person who is the leader in the church also should be prayerful, to be able to guide that sister to not to make those kind of errors. because you get to find out that you, after people get married, you really don't know those people. You don't know what kind of people they are. And so religiously, I think we can do a whole lot more. There can be a lot of teachings on relationship. There can be a lot of teachings on emotional maturity. There can be a lot of teachings about how we're able to negotiate on issues.
So finally, would please advise women in abusive marriage right now as we speak, especially the believing ones, the ones who are called ministers, pastors, or anyone who is actually holding a very serious position and just feels what we people say, if I do this.
Okay. Uh, we can, I believe because you made mention earlier when we're talking on about Sister Osinachi. One of the things we have to realize is that people will always talk. People have their mouths. They will always talk. There will always be a commentary. No matter where you go, whether you are doing what is right on the right side of the spectrum or on the right or the wrong side, people will always talk. So people are bound to say something. But one thing you must ask yourself, how is your relationship with your God? Whatever decision you are making, are you still right with God? If you have communicated what you are feeling to God, and you feel at peace to make a particular move, then go ahead and do it. Why do you want to subject yourself to a situation that will cost you your life when you have other options? And this is important for us as children of God. And so these women that are enduring these things, they don't have to. They don't have to. In America, and this is one thing about culture. Culturally, there are a lot of cultures that make the man feel he doesn't need to seek help or he doesn't have a problem. If you are battering your wife physically, you have a problem and you need help. You need to go through anger management classes. You need to try to reconstruct yourself. That is very, very important for us as children of God. And so we have to make sure that from all angles, this issue with relationship has to be attacked. Those women don't have to be quiet about it. They should come out and be upfront about it. And they should separate themselves from those physically abusive men, because they can get help. They don't have to say, oh, I want to be a survivor, because not too many people survive. We are talking about Sister Osinachi today because she is a known person who used to minister, had a big stage to minister to so many millions of people. How about the other women who are there, who are not known, who have been killed because of physical violence? These are the martyrs, that have their lives have been taken. But let them not die in vain. Let whatever they've endured and whatever they've gone through, let it be something that will create more awareness for every government, every society, so that these things do not continue to occur, continue to happen.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you once again. And to you out there, thank you too for being part of the show. It's indeed a great privilege and honor to know that you are always there to watch us. Until next time, I remain Olujoke Masako. Bye for now.